On January 1, 2018, B Van Sise was gifted a box of 35mm film from a colleague. He hadn't touched negatives in the 15 years since he made the switch to digital. The 12 rolls of film that totaled 372 exposures would last Van Sise an entire year if he took one photo per day, becoming the project that Van Sise eventually titled 1 Second. It was an undertaking that proved to be more difficult than Van Sise originally expected. Within 1 month, the veteran photographer realized that he had delved into one of the most meaningful and meditative experiences in his 18-year career as a photojournalist. It had been ages since picked up an analog camera. He made the switch after he got a job at Newsday, and his editor told him in no uncertain terms that he was going to have update to digital. Before starting the project, Van Sise had to buy a 35mm camera. He picked up an old Nikon N80 at one of Manhattan's camera stores and hit the pavement, carrying the relic everywhere he went for 365 days. Van Sise deliberately does not caption his photos. He insists on letting them tell their own story. "I'd rather let the images stand alone. Otherwise it becomes like a joke that one has to explain. If you have to explain it, it probably wasn't that good in the first place." More often than not, his work elicits more questions than it does answers. Perhaps that's precisely the point. Today's modern world of camera phones and digital photography has practically nullified the decisive moment, a concept that refers to capturing a spontaneous and fleeting event. Snapping an ephemeral instant is what defines photojournalism. Memory cards with the ability to store thousands of photos allowed photographers the wiggle room to make mistakes, giving them the opportunity to choose and manipulate the decisive moment after it has already happened in editing programs. Van Sise's analog endeavor forced him to relish every second of his day, while simultaneously deliberating if something better, more profound was still yet to come. He said, "Having the limitation to take only one photo is phenomenally limiting but also, in that way, phenomenally freeing. It forces you to make bets on how interesting your day is going to be." As it turns out, making bad wagers on how his day would end up was pretty common. The prologue to this project on the camera blog, Petapixel, reads, "No matter how it looks, this is the story of the photographs I didn't make this year." A marquee day for impulsive gambles happened when Van Sise hastily snapped a pair of construction workers outside his apartment complex in Long Island City, Queens, only to be captivated a few minutes later by an emotional scene between two partners ending their decades-long love over a cafe table that was flanked by suitcases and marked with tears. As per his own parameters, Van Sise painfully exercised self-restraint. Other times, Van Sise found himself in the reverse predicament. He said, "It was 11:55 p.m., nothing interesting had happened all day, and I was walking through Times Square station despondent when I see a male stripper dressed as Tutankhamun. I make haste down the subway platform to catch him in the frame of 1/15th of a second." The photographer waited to develop his film in large increments over the course of the year. He admitted that he often forgot about the majority of his daily photos until he saw the negatives. He said, "What struck me the most was that the best storytelling images were all things that were incredibly mundane." Of 365 days, Van Sise ended up with 300 clear exposures that he edited down to a collection 105 most evocative images. As the reality of life goes, not every day is poetic, interesting and beautiful, he said. Like any artist, Van Sise has his eccentricities. He insists on not divulging his entire name, opting instead to go by his initials BA. "I never liked my name. Everyone I know, my family and friends just call me BA." It's been like that for years. The Long Island native got the shutter bug in a high school photography class. He moved to New York City when he was 17 years old and answered an ad for a cub reporter at the now-defunct New York Sun. They hired the inexperienced Van Sise immediately, and with self-effacing charm he added, "That may explain why the Sun doesn't exist anymore." From there, Van Sise got his degree in visual arts and modern languages from Fordham University. His first job after graduating college was at Newsday in Long Island, where he notably made the switch from analog photography to digital. After a few years in publishing, Van Sise left to pursue work in what he called a company. Biding time in an office was not his passion, and he eventually left corporate America to follow his first love of photography. Photography is like anything. It's very easy to start doing it, but you're not really that thing until other folks consider you, it said Van Sise. With work displayed in the National Portrait Gallery of the Smithsonian and cover features in the New York Times, PBS NewsHour, NPR and The Village Voice, Van Sise has undeniably made a career out of photography.